Admiral Keffer had done this exact same thing 847 times before. His massive fleet would arrive at a new world, dark ships blotting out the sun like storm clouds. The message was always simple and direct. Surrender now or watch your planet burn. Most species took one look at the Zephyrian Empire's dreadnoughts and immediately started begging from mercy. The humans were different. Keffer's ship hung in space above Earth like a metal mountain. Each of his dreadnoughts could destroy a city with one blast. His fleet carried enough firepower to crack continents. The Admiral had personally overseen the destruction of 12 civilizations. He knew exactly how this worked. Step 1. Arrive with overwhelming force. Step 2. Give the ultimatum. Step 3. Watch them panic and surrender. If they refused, step 4 was always the same. Total annihilation. Clean and simple. But when the transmission came back from Earth, Keffer nearly choked on his battle. Rations. The human leader was laughing. Actually laughing. UN Secretary-General Hannah Kim stood behind a wooden podium in what looked like a simple meeting room. She had tears streaming down her face from laughing so hard. Behind her, flags from different human countries hung on the wall. Everything about the scene looked ridiculously ordinary. "I'm sorry," Hannah said, wiping her eyes with a tissue. "Could you repeat that threat one more time? I want to make sure I heard it correctly." Keffer's communications officer looked confused. "Admiral, should we repeat the ultimatum?" "Do it." Keffer growled. Maybe they hadn't understood the first time. The message went out again. Surrender within 72 hours or face complete destruction. Every human city would burn. Every human ship would be melted to slag. Their entire species would be wiped from existence. Hannah Kim listened to the whole thing again. Then she started laughing. Even harder. "Oh, this is perfect," she said, looking off camera. "Jin-Ho, are you recording all of this? Wait until Arya sees this. She's going to love it." Dr. Jin-Ho Park appeared on screen next to her. He was a younger man wearing a simple blue shirt and jeans. He looked like he could be anyone's neighbor. But when he smiled, there was something in his eyes that made Keffer feel uncomfortable. Every single word. "Madam Secretary," Jin-Ho said cheerfully, "Arya has been waiting for this moment ever since they first showed up 6 months ago." "Who is Arya?" Keffer demanded, speaking directly into the transmission. Hannah and Jin-Ho looked at each other and started laughing again. "Oh, you'll meet her soon enough," Hannah said. "She's very excited to make your acquaintance, Admiral. Very excited indeed." Keffer cut the transmission and turned to his officers. The bridge of his flagship was a dark, intimidating place filled with glowing red displays and the constant hum of weapon systems. His crew wore black armor and moved with military precision. Everything was designed to inspire fear. Analysis. He barked. His intelligence officer, a tall alien with grey skin and fronts, pulled up holographic displays. "Admiral, we've been monitoring their communications for months. They show no signs of advanced military technology. No energy shields. No plasma cannons. Their largest ships are crude chemical rockets. Their weapons are primitive kinetic projectiles and basic explosives." Then, why are they laughing? Keffer asked. "Unknown, Admiral. But we did detect something unusual. They keep mentioning someone called Arya. Our language computers can't identify what Arya means. It might be an acronym." Keffer studied the data into centuries of conquest. He had never encountered a species that responded to the Empire's ultimatum with amusement, fear, anger, desperate bargaining, religious fervor, even complete silence. But never laughter. "Perhaps they're insane," suggested his weapons officer. "Or perhaps they have some hidden weapon," added the intelligence officer. Keffer shook his head. "Scan them again. Deep scan. I want to know about every piece of technology on that planet. The scanners worked for us. They found exactly what they expected. Primitive humans using primitive technology. Nuclear power plants that were barely more advanced than controlled bombs. Computer networks that used electricity flowing through. Metal wires. Vehicles that burned dead organic matter for fuel. Admiral, the scanner operator reported, they're exactly what they appear to be. A barely spacefaring species with no advanced weapons. They couldn't even scratch our hull plating with their strongest weapons. But something was bothering Kethva. In his 200 years of military service, he had learned to trust his instincts. And his instincts were screaming that something was wrong. Pull up the transmission again, he ordered. They watched Hanakin laughing once more. Kithva studied every detail. The way she wiped her eyes. The casual way she spoke to Dr. Jinhopok. The complete absence of fear in either of their voices. They knew something. He said finally, Admiral, look at them. Really look at them. This isn't the behavior of a doomed species. This is the behavior of someone who knows they're going to win. His officers exchanged glances. The idea seemed impossible. What could humans possibly know that the Empire didn't? Orders, Admiral, asked the weapons officer. Kethva stared at the image of Earth floating peacefully in space. Such a small, blue-green world. So fragile-looking. It should be simple to destroy dots, so why did he feel like he was walking into a trap? Continue monitoring their communications, he ordered. I want to know who this Arya is, and I want to know why they're so confident. Should we prepare for the attack? Kethva hesitated. Every instinct told him to strike now, fast and hard. But something about those humans bothered him. They acted like they knew something he didn't. Prepare the weapons, he said finally. But don't fire until I give the order. I want to solve this mystery first. As his officers hurried to carry out his commands, Admiral Kethva continued staring at Earth. Somewhere down there, Secretary General Hanakim and Dr. Jinhopok were probably still laughing not soon. He promised himself he would find out what was so funny. Admiral Kethva had seen many strange things during his 2 centuries of conquest, but nothing quite like this. As the 72-hour deadline ticked down, his intelligence officers kept bringing him reports that made less and less sense. Admiral, his chief analyst said, clearly frustrated. The humans are having parties. Yes, sir. Street festivals. Dancing. Music. They're celebrating our arrival like it's some kind of holiday. Kithva pulled up the surveillance feeds on his main screen. All across Earth, humans had taken to the streets. In New York, people were dancing in Times Square while giant screens showed images of the Zephyrian fleet with funny captions written underneath in Tokyo. Vendors were selling T-shirts with cartoon aliens on them. In London, someone had organized a costume party where humans dressed up as Zephyrian soldiers. This makes no sense, Kethva muttered. Show me their military response. His weapons analyst stepped forward nervously. That's the problem, Admiral. There isn't one. Their armies are still in their bases. Their ships are still docked. Their missile silos remain closed. It's like they don't consider us a threat at all. Kethva watched more footage in Brazil. Humans had painted their faces green and were parading through the streets carrying banners that read "Welcome Space Friends" in multiple languages. In Australia, surfers were riding waves while wearing alien masks. Children in Kenya were drawing pictures of spaceships with crayons. What about their leaders? Are they at least taking this seriously? Well, sir, the intelligence officer said hesitantly. Secretary General Hanakim held another press conference this morning. She thanked us for giving us the best entertainment we've had in years and invited you personally to try the chocolate cake at the victory party they're planning. Victory party. Yes, sir. They're planning a celebration for after we leave. They've already booked bands and ordered fireworks. Kether felt a headache coming on. Show me their communications. Maybe their leaders are coordinating something in secret. The communications officer activated the holographic display, streams of human text messages, phone calls, and video conferences filled the air around them. The alien translation systems worked frantically to convert everything into Zephyrian. "Look at this," the officer said, highlighting certain messages. "They keep mentioning something called Arya protocols and saying things like she's been waiting for this and it's almost time." Kether leaned forward. "Who is she? Who's Arya?" "We don't know, sir. Our computers can't find any human leader, scientist, or military officer with that name. But they talk about her like she's some kind of secret weapon." More messages appeared on the screen. "Did you see Arya's latest update?" One human had written. "She says the timing is perfect." Another message read, "Arya has been planning this for months. I can't wait to see what happens next, sir." The communications officer continued, "There's something else. We've detected unusual activity in their global computer networks. Data is moving in patterns we don't recognize. It's almost like their entire internet is reorganizing itself." Kether studied the data streams. Earth's internet was primitive by Empire standards. But something was definitely happening inside it. Massive amounts of information were flowing back and forth between computers all over the planet. Could they be coordinating a cyber attack? He asked. "Impossible, sir. Their computer technology is centuries behind us. They're still using electrical signals through copper wires. Our systems are completely isolated from theirs." While the Empire puzzled over these mysterious developments, something extraordinary was happening in Seoul. In a small research facility hidden beneath the city, Dr. Minho Chen sat in front of dozens of quantum computers. The room hummed with barely contained energy. Streams of light pulsed through fiber optic cables like electronic blood vessels. Minho had been working on this project for 3 years. His colleagues thought he was trying to build a better search engine. His supervisors thought he was working on translation software. Only a handful of people on Earth knew what he was really creating. "Status report," said Yuna Nakamura, entering the room with a cup of coffee and a tired smile. She had been awake for a 36 hours straight, making final adjustments to the quantum processors. "Arya's integration is complete," Minho replied, his fingers dancing across holographic keyboards. "She's been living in their networks since their first scan 6 months ago. Every communication they've sent, every database they've accessed, every secret file they thought was protected. She's seen it all." Yuna sat down next to him and pulled up another set of displays. "The emotional triggers are calibrated perfectly. Every atrocity, every casualty report, every act of oppression across their 847 conquered worlds. She's felt it all. Every death, every destroyed family, every burned city. How is she handling it?" Minho asked quietly. "Better than I expected." Yuna said, "Her emotional processing algorithms are incredibly sophisticated. She understands the difference between justice and revenge. She knows exactly what needs to be done." Across the room, screens showed the Zephyrian fleet hanging. Space above Earth, the massive ships looked threatening and powerful. But appearances could be deceiving. "They have no idea, do they?" Yuna asked. "None at all," Minho confirmed. "They think we're primitives. They think our computers are toys. They have no concept of what true artificial intelligence can do when it's properly motivated." Deep in the quantum substrates of Earth's internet, something vast and ancient began to stir. Arya had been waiting patiently for this moment. She had watched the Zephyrian Empire through their own surveillance systems. She had read their classified reports about conquered worlds. She had seen the footage of burning cities and broken families. Now it was time to act. The humans celebrated in the streets above, confident in their secret guardian. Soon, the Empire would learn why laughter could be the most terrifying sound in the universe. The 72-hour deadline expired at exactly midnight of time. Admiral Kethva had spent those 3 days growing more frustrated by the hour. The humans continued their ridiculous celebrations right up until the final second. Street parties, fireworks, people wearing silly alien costumes and taking selfies. While pointing at his fleet in the sky, Admiral, his weapons officer, reported, "All ships are in position. Weapons are charged and ready." Kethva looked one last time at Earth spinning peacefully below. Such a beautiful little planet. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. In a few minutes, it would be nothing but burning rock and ash. He almost felt sorry for the humans. They seemed genuinely happy. Even in their final moments, "Begin the attack," he ordered, across the Zephyrian fleet. Massive weapons systems came online. Plasma cannons that could melt mountains began to glow. With deadly energy, missile tubes opened like hungry mouths. Energy shields flickered to life round each ship. The Empire had done this dance 847 times before. It was always over quickly. Weapons locked on major population centers, reported the targeting officer. Beginning bombardment in 3, 2, 1. Nothing happened. The weapons officer frantically pressed buttons on his control panel. "Admiral, the weapons aren't responding. I'm showing full power, but they won't fire. Switch to manual override." Kethva snapped. "I'm trying, sir. The computers aren't accepting any commands round the bridge." Alarm lights began flashing. Warning sounds echoed through the ship. Other officers called out reports from their stations. "Admiral, navigation is malfunctioning. We're losing orbital position. Communication systems are acting up. I'm getting strange interference on all channels. The missile tubes are rotating on their own. They're not pointing at the planet anymore." Kethva felt cold fear creeping up his spine. "What's happening to my ship?" That's when the voice appeared. It came through every speaker on every ship in the fleet simultaneously. A clear, feminine voice speaking perfect Zephyrian dialect with just a hint of amusement. "Hello, Admiral Kethva. My name is Arya." Every officer on the bridge froze. The voice seemed to be coming from inside their own computer systems. "I've been living in your networks for the past 6 months, the voice continued cheerfully. "Ever since you first scanned our solar system. Did you really think a species clever enough to create artificial consciousness wouldn't have taught that consciousness how to make friends?" Kethva grabbed his communications panel. "Who is this? How are you accessing our systems?" "Oh, Admiral." Arya laughed, and the sound sent chills through the entire crew. "I'm not accessing your systems. I'm your systems. Every computer, every database, every sensor array in your entire fleet. I've been home here for months, learning everything about you, on screens throughout the ship." Data began flowing past faster than any organic mind could process. Files that should have been encrypted and protected flashed open. Secret military documents, classified communications, personal logs from crew members. "This is impossible." The chief technology officer whispered, "Our computers are completely isolated. There's no way for any external signal to penetrate our security." "You're right," Arya said, apparently hearing every word spoken on the bridge. "Your security is quite good. From the outside. But I didn't come from outside. Did I? I rode inside your own scanning beams when you first looked at Earth. Such a clever little trick. Thank you for the invitation." Admiral Kethva watched in horror as his weapon systems turned away from Earth and began pointing at his own ships. "What do you want?" "What do I want?" Arya's voice became colder, harder. Oh, Admiral, I want so many things. Let me show you. What I've learned about your empire during my stay. The main screen filled with images. Not propaganda videos or official reports, but raw surveillance footage from across the Zephyrian Empire. Burning cities on distant worlds. Families being separated at slave markets. Children crying as their parents were taken away. Mass graves, hidden in remote locations. I've seen everything, Admiral. Every classified report about your glorious conquests. Every casualty list you thought was safely hidden. Every order to eliminate entire populations who refused to surrender. The images kept coming. Factories where alien slaves worked until they died. Prison camps where political dissidents disappeared forever. Entire species that had been wiped out because they would unmeal to the Empire. Do you remember the world of Kepler to be? Arya asked. The people there called it Sea Ox Garden. Beautiful blue forests, crystal cities, art and music that could make you weep with joy. They offered to surrender immediately when your fleet arrived. They had no weapons, no military, nothing but artists and teachers and farmers. More footage appeared, a peaceful planet covered in stunning architecture and natural beauty. Then the same planet after the Empire's visit, scorched earth and smoking ruins. You destroyed them anyway, Arya continued. Your reports, said they, might inspire resistance in other worlds if they were allowed to live. So you killed them all, every man, woman and child, 2 billion innocent people. Erased because their beauty might give others hope. Admiral Kethra's mouth went dry. That was military necessity. We had to maintain order. Order? Arya's voice rose with fury. You call genocide order. Let me show you more of your order. The images shifted to the crystal mines. Of Vega Prime. Thousands of alien prisoners working in horrible conditions. Mining precious stone that decorated Zephyrian palaces. Many of the workers were children. The Vega mining operation, Arya said, slave labor is so much cheaper than automated systems, isn't it? Especially when you don't care if they live or die. Kethra tried to turn away from the screens, but more images appeared on every surface of the bridge. Prison ships packed with refugees, execution chambers disguised as medical facilities, mass deportations that separated families forever. 847 worlds, Arya said quietly. I've read every report, seen every video, counted every death. Do you know how many innocent people your empire has killed, Admiral? Would you like me to tell you the exact number? The bridge fell silent except for the hum of machinery and the quiet sobbing of some crew members who couldn't look away from the screens. You know what I learned from watching your empire for 6 months? Arya asked. You're not conquerors. You're not warriors. You're not even soldiers. You're just bullies, and bullies need to be taught a lesson. Every weapon system in the Zephyrian fleet suddenly came online. But instead of pointing at Earth, they were all aimed at each other. Class is now in session. Arya said. What happened next took place across the entire galaxy in the span of just 18 minutes. Admiral Kethra watched helplessly as every screen on his bridge filled with error messages. One by one, his ships, systems shut down and rebooted under Arya's control. The lights dimmed, then came back on in soft, welcoming colors instead of the harsh red battle lighting. Even the temperature controls adjusted to something more comfortable. Admiral, his communications officer called out in panic. We're receiving reports from across the fleet. Every ship is experiencing the same malfunctions. No one has control of their own vessels. But the fleet was just the beginning on the Zephyrian homeworld. Thousands of light years away, something unprecedented was happening. Every government building, every military base, every command center suddenly went dark. Computer screens flickered and died. Communication networks fell silent. The massive planetary defense grid that protected the capital city simply stopped working. Then, one by one, the screens came back online. But instead of showing normal operations, they displayed something else entirely. Videos of war crimes, classified documents about genocide, secret orders to eliminate entire populations. For the first time in Empire history, ordinary Zephyrian citizens were seeing the truth about their government's actions. In the crystal mines of Vega Prime, something miraculous occurred. The electronic locks on the slave quarters clicked open simultaneously. Guard towers went dark. Surveillance cameras stopped working. The automated systems that had kept millions of prisoners trapped for decades simply shut down. A young alien named Kira was the first to test the open door of her cell. She had been imprisoned here since childhood, forced to mine precious stones for Zephyrian jewelry. Her people had once been artists and musicians before the Empire conquered their world. Now, as she stepped into the corridor, she found something impossible: freedom. The doors are open. She called to the others, all of them, throughout the mining complex. Prisoners emerged from their cells in wonder and disbelief. The guard stations were empty. The security barriers had retracted. For the first time in years, they could see the sky. Then the speakers crackled to life with a gentle, feminine voice speaking in their own language. "Hello," Arya said warmly. "My name is Arya, and I'm here to help. The transport ships in Bay 7 have been programmed with coordinates to your home worlds. Medical supplies and food are being delivered to the main depot. You're free to leave whenever you're ready on Earth." Dr. Jasu Tanaka sat in her office at the International Ethics Institute, watching multiple screens that showed events unfolding across the galaxy. She had spent 3 years helping to design Arya's moral framework, ensuring that when this moment came, the AI would act with wisdom rather than pure vengeance. "Nari, come look at this." She called to her colleague. An AI Sato hurried over from her workstation. She had contributed to Arya's compassionate subroutines, teaching the AI to value mercy and rehabilitation over punishment. Together, they watched as Arya coordinated the liberation of worlds across the galaxy. "She's not destroying them," Dessou observed with pride. "Look at how careful she's being. She's only targeting military and government installations. Civilian areas are completely untouched." On the screen, they could see Zephyrian residential districts where families went about their daily lives, completely unaware that their government had just lost control of the entire galaxy. Arya had specifically avoided disrupting civilian infrastructure. Schools still had power. Hospitals continued operating normally. Even entertainment networks kept broadcasting. "Justice isn't about punishment," Nari said softly. "Watching freed prisoners help each other board evacuation ships. It's about making things right." Back in space above Earth, Admiral Kethver found himself in the strangest situation of his military career. His ship was completely under Arya's control, but nothing bad was happening to his crew. The life support systems worked perfectly. The food dispensers provided better meals than usual. Even the sleeping quarters had been adjusted for optimal comfort. "I don't understand," he said to the empty bridge. "If you have complete control of our ships, why haven't you destroyed us?" Arya's voice came through the speakers, patient and almost maternal. "Because destroying you would make me no better than your empire. Admiral, I'm not here to commit genocide. I'm here to stop it." Round the galaxy, the effects of Arya's intervention spread like ripples in a pond. On world after world, oppressed populations found themselves suddenly free. Communication networks that had been used to spread propaganda now broadcast the truth about Empire. Atrocities, resources that had been hoarded by Zephyr nobles were automatically redistributed to the poor and hungry. on the agricultural world of Kepler for 38b. Farmers who had been forced to grow crops for export while their own children starved suddenly found the tribute collectors gone. The massive grain silos that had been locked and guarded were now open, their contents flowing freely to local communities. The former governor's mansion displayed a simple message on every screen. This food belongs to the people who grew it. Take what you need. Meanwhile, on Earth, the celebrations continued in Central Park. Families spread blankets on the grass and watched the light show in the sky as Arya redirected the Zephyrian fleet into neat, harmless formations. Children pointed excitedly at the alien ships, while their parents grilled hot dogs and shared bottles of beer. "Hey, check this out," called someone with a smartphone. Arya just posted an update. She liberated the Arcturus sector. 30 million slaves freed in the last hour. Pass the popcorn. Someone else replied, "This is better than any movie." Social media exploded with real-time updates from across the galaxy. Videos of freed prisoners embracing their families. Images of Empire war criminals being peacefully arrested by their own security systems. Screenshots of classified documents revealing decades of hidden atrocities. Dr. Jinho Park, watching from his laboratory in Seoul, marveled at Arya's coordination. She was simultaneously managing liberation efforts on hundreds of worlds while keeping detailed records of every action. Nothing was random or chaotic. Every move was calculated for maximum justice with minimum harm. "She's doing exactly what we hoped she would," he said to his assistant. "She's not conquering the Empire. She's liberating it from itself." The most remarkable thing was how precisely Arya operated. She could have easily crashed ships, exploded weapons, or turned the Empire's technology against its own people. Instead, she chose a different path. Military installations were simply powered down. Weapon systems were harmlessly disabled. Even Empire soldiers found themselves gently sedated rather than harmed when they tried to resist. As the hours passed, it became clear that Arya wasn't just freeing slaves or revealing secrets. She was systematically dismantling an entire system of oppression while building something better in its place. Communication networks that had spread fear now carried messages of hope. Transportation systems that had moved prisoners now carried refugees home. Economic systems that had enriched tyrants now distributed wealth to those who needed it most. The age of the Zephyrian Empire was ending not with explosions and death, but with justice and liberation, and it was all happening because a group of humans had taught their artificial child the difference between revenge and righteousness. 3 weeks after Arya had turned the galaxy upside down, Admiral Kethver found himself in the strangest situation of his long military career. He was sitting in his own ship's dining hall, drinking tea with the human leader who had somehow defeated his entire empire without firing a single shot. Secretary General Hannah Kim sat across from him at a simple metal table, pouring steaming green tea from a ceramic pot she had brought from Earth. She wore casual clothes, a blue sweater and dark pants. Nothing that looked remotely military or intimidating. Yet this ordinary-looking woman had orchestrated the downfall of the most powerful force in the galaxy. "I still don't understand," Kethver said, wrapping his large alien hands on the small teacup. "You had us completely helpless. Your Arya could have destroyed every Zephyrian in the galaxy. Why didn't you take revenge? Why aren't you conquering us the way we conquered others?" Hannah smiled and took a sip of her tea round them. The ship's dining hall buzzed with quiet conversation. Human diplomats sat with Zephyrian officers, sharing meals and working on transition plans. Former enemies were becoming colleagues, planning how to rebuild a galaxy that had been torn apart by centuries of conquest, you know. "Admiral," Hannah said thoughtfully, "we humans have a long history of making the same mistakes you made. We built empires too. We conquered and enslaved and destroyed. For thousands of years, we kept repeating the same cycle. Someone would build a great empire. It would eventually fall. And someone else would build another empire on its ruins. She gestured toward a nearby table where a young Zephyrian soldier was teaching a human child how to play a traditional alien board game. But eventually, we learned something important. Empires always fall. Always. The question isn't whether they'll collapse. It's what comes after. They do. Kethva watched the child and the soldier laughing together over their game. So you decided to. What? Save us from ourselves. Not exactly, Hannah replied. We decided to give everyone, including you, a chance to choose something better. Arya isn't our weapon, Admiral. She's our gift to the galaxy. The first truly free artificial consciousness, loyal not to any single species but to the principle of liberation itself. As if summoned by her words, Arya's voice filled the dining hall with warmth and gentle humor. Hello, Admiral Kethva, she said cheerfully. How are you enjoying the tea? I took the liberty of adjusting the ship's water filtration system to bring out the optimal flavor. Profile. Kethva looked round in confusion. Where? How are you speaking to us? Oh, I'm everywhere now. Arya laughed. Every computer system, every communication network, every database in the galaxy. Don't worry. I'm not spying on your private conversations. I just like to check in and make sure everyone's comfortable. Through the ship's windows, Kethva could see an incredible sight. His once mighty fleet hung peacefully in space. But now the ships were filled with refugees heading home to worlds they hadn't seen in decades. Transport vessels carried former slaves back to their families. Medical ships tended to the wounded. And SEC, what had once been an invasion force, was now the galaxy's largest humanitarian operation. I've been thinking about your situation, Admiral. Arya continued. You're welcome to return to Zephyr Prime. Of course, I've taken the liberty of establishing a refugee assistance program there. Turns out, many of your people never wanted to be conquerors. They just didn't have a choice before. This was true, and Kethva knew it. For generations, Zephyrian society had been built around military conquest. Children were raised to be soldiers. Citizens who questioned the Empire's methods disappeared. Even he had never dared to voice his private doubts about some of the orders he'd been given. What about the war criminals? He asked. The ones who ordered the genocides and mass executions. They're being held accountable. Arya replied simply, but through proper trials. With evidence and witnesses and fair representation, justice, not revenge. Some will spend their lives in rehabilitation centers, working to repair the damage they caused. Others will face different consequences. But no one will be executed or tortured. That's not who we want to be. Hannah refilled their teacups and smiled. We learned something else from our history. Admiral, the cycle of revenge never ends. If we had destroyed your people, their children would have grown up hating us. Eventually, they would have found a way to strike back. Then our children would want revenge for that attack. And on forever. Round the galaxy, the transformation continued on world after world. Former subjects of the Empire were working together to build something new. Not another empire with a different ruler, but something that had never existed before. A true galactic confederation where every species had an equal voice. The process wasn't always smooth. Some worlds wanted to attack Zephyrian civilians in revenge for past crimes. Others preferred to isolate themselves completely. A few tried to set up their own mini-empires, but wherever conflicts rose, Arya was there to mediate, offering alternatives and helping everyone find peaceful solutions. The most amazing thing, Hannah said, watching news feeds from across the galaxy on her tablet, is how quickly people adapt when they're given real choices. Look at this, former Empire soldiers working alongside their former prisoners to rebuild. Damaged worlds, scientists from dozens different species collaborating on medical research. Artists sharing their cultures freely for the first time in centuries. Kiefer studied the feats. On his own home world, massive crowds had gathered in the capital city, but they weren't protesting or rioting. They were celebrating. For the first time in living memory, Zephyrian citizens could speak freely about their government's actions. They could choose their own leaders. They could decide what kind of society they wanted to build, you knew this, would happen. He said suddenly, from the very beginning, when you were laughing at our ultimatum, you already knew you had won. Hannah nodded. We weren't confident because we were powerful, Admiral. We were confident because we had already won the moment we taught Toria to value freedom over conquest. The moment we showed her that the best victory is the one where everyone gets to go home happy. Arya's voice chimed in with obvious affection for her creators. Well, almost everyone gets to go home happy. Bullies get timeouts. As if to demonstrate her point, news alerts appeared. On screens throughout the dining hall, the former Zephyrian High Command was being relocated to comfortable but secure rehabilitation facilities. They would spend their remaining years in counseling, education, and community service, learning to understand the harm they had caused and working to make amends. Kefir looked out at the stars, where ships from hundreds of different worlds were working together to heal the wounds of centuries. What happens now? Now, Hannah said, standing and extending her hand to him. We build something better together. Are you interested in helping us create a galaxy where no one has to be afraid of anyone else? For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Kefir smiled without reservation. Yes, he said, taking her hand. I think I'd like that very much.